I'm in need of advice after making a serious mistake. My husband, 38M, and I, 34 Farads, have been together for 10 years, and everything seemed perfect until one work trip changed everything. During a month-long assignment away, I ended up having an affair with a colleague, fueled by insecurity and doubts about my marriage. Our relationship had been struggling, and I let my emotions cloud my judgment. I did things I never thought I'd do, and I deeply regret it. Upon returning home, I tried to bury it, hoping to incorporate some of the excitement I'd felt into our marriage, but I kept holding back to avoid raising his suspicions. A few days ago, I went to the doctor and learned I have HPV, likely from the affair. I haven't told my husband about either the diagnosis or the infidelity yet, but I know I must. I don't want to hurt him more than I already have, and I'm terrified of shattering our relationship further. After much reflection, I confessed the affair and my diagnosis to him. The heartbreak in his eyes was unbearable. He left, needing time and space to process everything, and his parents, who are very religious, surprisingly supported his decision to consider divorce. I never imagined things would reach this point, especially given their beliefs about marriage being for better or worse. Since then, both our families have become involved. My parents confronted me, blaming me for jeopardizing my marriage for a fling. The tension was high, and I feel lost and alone, realizing the extent of the pain I've caused. I'm haunted by memories of our happy times and regret not handling things differently. I wish I could take it all back. To anyone in a situation like mine, please learn from my mistakes. Betrayal may seem easy in a moment of weakness, but the consequences are enormous and not worth it. Honesty and communication are the foundations of any relationship, and I see that now more than ever. Unfortunately, some people made hurtful comments suggesting we weren't a suitable couple, assuming I was too pretty for him. I knew these remarks bothered him, even though he was a handsome, well-built man. I found him incredibly attractive and often expressed that to him. Over the years, I tried to communicate my physical needs with love and empathy. I wanted him to feel respected, as I hoped he'd respect my needs. However, initiating intimacy was challenging. He'd often respond negatively, which hurt. Whenever I shared feeling unsatisfied, he'd spiral into self-doubt or avoid the discussion entirely. Eventually, I felt so rejected that I started losing interest in being close to him. At times, I developed harmless crushes on our close friends, though I never acted on these feelings. I didn't want a divorce, but I yearned for a consensual way to explore my desires. Eventually, I found the courage to talk with my husband about the idea of an open relationship, hoping it could help us address our physical needs with mutual understanding. He was initially hurt and defensive, wondering if he wasn't enough for me. After many heartfelt discussions, he declined, fearing the relationship might be unbalanced. Still, I wanted to show him I valued his happiness, so I arranged a surprise, a fantasy he'd always mentioned. This experience helped him open up to the idea gradually. As we continued exploring, he eventually agreed to me being with another man under certain conditions, like no emotional connections and keeping everything discreet. However, I grew close to a mutual friend, leading to a discreet but intense connection. Soon, I was involved with a few people, and my husband kept his word not to inquire about them. But at a party, he noticed my interactions with one of our friends. He confronted me, and I admitted to the relationship. Although hurt, he agreed to keep our arrangement if I ended things with that friend. Yet, the dynamic shifted. While I honored his request, I noticed he was developing an emotional bond with someone he'd been seeing. This wasn't what we'd agreed on, and I confronted him, worried about where things were headed. Then one night, he broke devastating news. The woman he'd been with was pregnant, and she planned to keep the baby. Shock, betrayal, and heartbreak flooded me. We had rules to prevent exactly this outcome, and now my worst fears were realized. I gave him an ultimatum, hoping he'd prioritize our marriage. But he chose her over me, leaving me feeling abandoned. Our shared memories felt like a distant illusion, and I realized I couldn't stay in a relationship where my feelings were disregarded. I needed to find the strength to let go and rebuild my life, despite the unimaginable pain of watching him move forward without me. Our marriage lasted years, but it was filled with agony that tested my resilience at every turn. As time passed, I continued to explore my sexuality, engaging with multiple partners, much like we had during our open relationship. Yet, it felt hollow, lacking the deep connection and love we once shared. These encounters couldn't fill the void left by my broken heart. Deep down, I longed for the love we had lost, the laughter, the shared dreams, the sense of security I felt in his embrace. But despite the pain, I realized that our love had been irreparably damaged by the choices we had made. Do I regret suggesting an open relationship to my husband? I'm unsure. Perhaps the right decision would have been to divorce him when I realized he couldn't fulfill my physical desires or my need to explore my sexuality. In the end, we found ourselves in the same place, separated but still haunted by the same issues. I divorced my ex-wife over 5 years ago after she repeatedly cheated on me with over 13 different men and 2 women. To give you some context, my ex and I used to participate in swinging activities until the last year of our marriage. But as things began to fall apart, I decided to stop swapping partners. She disagreed, continuing to have encounters with other men without my knowledge. 6 months before our divorce, our oldest child was diagnosed with a life-threatening illness. I won't go into specifics to protect our privacy, but the pressure was immense. My ex began struggling, turning to heavy drinking, which endangered both herself and our children. Things got so bad that I had to take our kids and move out for a few weeks. During that time, her best friend, let's call her Amy, came to me. My ex had confided in her during a girls' night out, revealing everything. She'd been sleeping with a different man every night, getting drunk while caring for the kids, and even leaving our 3- and 4-year-old children alone at home while they slept, just to meet a guy. Amy also shared that my ex planned to file for divorce after squeezing more money from me, all while living rent-free in my home. Amy and I were appalled. We realized something had to be done to stop this reckless behavior. My ex despised living with me, preferring to spend time with her admirers. It was clear we needed a plan to remove her from the house and limit her custody of the children. Step 1. I moved back in. When I sat down beside her, she panicked, demanding I leave and threatening to call the police. What she didn't know was that I was secretly recording our conversation. She called the cops, accusing me of domestic issues. The police arrived quickly, handcuffing me. But when the detective heard the recording, his anger shifted toward her. Soon enough, the roles were reversed, and she found herself in handcuffs. She spent the night in jail and stayed with Amy for the next week. I obtained a restraining order, and during this time, she went on a shopping spree, buying a new laptop, a new iPhone, and a whole new wardrobe, all on our joint account. Amy confirmed she was heavily drinking and even recorded a video of my ex in a drunken, out-of-control state. It was clear she was spiraling. I took immediate action, moving all our money to a separate account and closing our joint credit cards. When my ex realized she had no access to funds, she flipped out, even confiding in Amy about her suicidal thoughts due to how unbearable everything had become. As much as I despised what she had done to our family, I didn't want her to harm herself. Amy convinced her to seek professional help, and she checked into an inpatient facility. While there, she received the care she desperately needed, but it also made it clear that she posed a risk to herself and the children. It was time to make everything official. I consulted with my attorney to begin divorce proceedings and secure primary custody. The evidence we had was overwhelming, and my attorney fully supported me in my pursuit of sole custody. We filed for divorce and obtained a temporary restraining order. 2 weeks later, we delivered the divorce papers to her while she was still in the hospital. At the initial court hearing, my ex took the stand, fabricating a story about abuse, claiming it was the reason she ended up in the mental hospital. She put on a convincing performance, but when it was my turn, my attorney presented the irrefutable evidence: bank records, videos, and even Amy's testimony. Amy recounted the details of my ex's neglectful behavior and spiraling addiction. Throughout her testimony, my ex couldn't keep her composure. Her lies unraveled in front of the judge, and the court ultimately granted me sole custody of our children. My ex was given supervised visitation until she completed rehab and mental health counseling. We reached an agreement outside of court regarding visitation, and I kept the house, my investment accounts, and 80% custody of the children. She moved in with her mother for the next 2.5 years, struggling to hold down a job. 5 years later, life is looking up. I'm finally at peace knowing that my ex is no longer a part of my life. Story 2. My ex, D, and I were high school sweethearts. We met while working at a restaurant, and the connection was instant. We were inseparable, and I truly believed we were meant to be together forever. Our families adored each other, and Dee's cousin, Shannon, became one of my closest friends. When I joined the Army, Dee attended a local college, and we continued to stay in touch, writing letters almost daily. The distance was hard, but I held on to the belief that we were destined to be together. After 2 years, I felt ready to propose, but that's when everything changed. Shannon contacted me and told me that Dee had been cheating. It shattered me. When I learned that Dee had been involved with one of my closest friends, let's call him M, I couldn't believe it. I decided to confront both of them. I traveled home, but when I arrived at M's apartment, I found Dee's car parked outside. Inside, I heard them together. My heart broke as I stood there, witnessing the betrayal. I left without saying a word, devastated beyond measure. I returned to my base, going through the motions of life. Dee sent me letters begging for forgiveness, but I knew if I spoke to her, I would forgive her. So I chose to stay silent. I'll never forget that betrayal, but I've learned to move forward, knowing that I'm stronger than I ever was before. I couldn't spend my life with someone I could never trust. Though I made a few calls to Shannon, she told me that Dee was upset and angry that I wouldn't give her a second chance. Maybe, if it hadn't been one of my closest friends, I could have considered it. But the betrayal I felt was too overwhelming, and I knew I could never trust her again. Life moved forward, and I lost touch with Shannon and all my old friends from before my time in the Army. Eventually, I met another woman, and we got married. We had a son together. Nearly 20 years passed since my heart was shattered. Then, one day, while attending my son's pee-wee football practice, I ran into Shannon. It turned out her son was on the same team as mine. After some small talk, she revealed that she and M had continued their relationship after Dee and I broke up. About a year after our breakup, Dee became pregnant, but once M found out, he disappeared. Dee was left to raise their child alone, full of regret. Since then, she hasn't been able to maintain a relationship for more than 3 months. Shannon told me that Dee still considers me the love of her life and believes no one else compares. According to Shannon, Dee wishes she could go back and undo the mistake that ruined the best thing she ever had. Those were her words, not mine. Shannon even suggested arranging a lunch between Dee and me to help her move on, but I told her not to mention to Dee that she had seen me. The thought of seeing her again still hurt too much. Even now, I struggle with trust issues and find it hard to develop close friendships with other men. I keep my guard up to protect myself from potential hurt, which sometimes prevents me from fully opening up to my wife. Please understand, I love her dearly, and I would never do anything to jeopardize our marriage. But I still have lingering feelings for Dee, and if she were to re-enter my life, it would be hard for me not to fall for her all over again. About 4 years ago, I was in a relationship with a woman who seemed perfect for me. We shared the same dark sense of humor, similar interests, and could talk for hours about everything. She was the kind of person I wanted to embark on adventures with, someone I could see myself leaving everything behind for. We both agreed we didn't want kids. When we saw families with kids at restaurants, we'd opt for takeout. Her parents and friends loved me, which was nice since I had just moved to town. Before we started dating, she told me I was the most patient and understanding boyfriend she'd ever had. Despite attending different colleges in separate states, we made it work. She even came to visit me before her classes started, and we stayed in touch through Skype and text messages. But things started changing. She became less talkative and seemed distracted. I didn't think much of it at first, assuming that the distance was getting to her. So I made a plan to surprise her. As a broke college student without a car, I didn't have money for a plane or bus ticket. But I packed a backpack with supplies and a duffel bag with clothes and asked truckers at a nearby stop which direction they were headed. It took me 15 hours to reach her 500 miles, which would usually take 10 hours by car. I switched trucks 4 times during the journey. When I finally arrived, her roommates told me she wasn't home, but I could stay in her room. The next morning, I texted her, and she told me she was hanging out with a friend, Zane. I started feeling suspicious, but brushed it off. I found out where Zane lived and went to his dorm. No one answered when I knocked. I returned upstairs to have a cigarette, and then I heard the sound that changed everything. I turned back and knocked again, louder this time. Zane responded, jokingly saying, "Girl Scout cookies, leave them by the door." I knocked again, more insistently. I knew something wasn't right. I texted her again, and she replied, asking me to come outside. But when I went to meet her, she looked defeated, and there was Zane hiding in her closet. I was devastated. We spent hours talking outside, and she admitted she had slept with him the night before. That was the breaking point for us. After the conversation, we fought for hours in her dorm room and continued fighting for 2 months over texts. I saw her one more time when I visited my parents, but it ended badly. She and Zane got her pregnant, and they both dropped out of school. She moved 4 hours away to live with his parents. That was 4 years ago. Now, she's feeling depressed, separated from Zane but still in a relationship. She probably regrets having a child, given that she never wanted kids in the first place. Now, fast forward to my current situation. I recently found out that my wife has been cheating on me for months. It started as an emotional affair, but escalated. We've been together for years and have 8 kids. For 5 months, she convinced me that I was the problem in our relationship. She kept bringing up old issues, and nothing I did seemed to make her happy. Turns out, the other guy is her high school ex-boyfriend, who's married with 4 kids of his own. He lives just a few miles from their high school, and my wife reached out to him 7 months ago. She's been visiting her parents every few months and has admitted to seeing him during those trips, though she denies anything physical happened. But I know for sure they've been emotionally involved. and they even did it in our own home. I discovered all this a few days ago. I started typing a message to confront her, but deleted it. I accidentally sent a blank message instead. The next day, she tried calling me, but I was at work. She was furious when I asked if the other guy's wife knew about the affair. A week later, the other guy's wife posted a message on Facebook about how he had taught her about unconditional love, completely unaware of what was going on. Now, my wife spends hours talking to the other guy every day while I'm working. I'm considering whether to reach out to his wife, but some friends and family are against it. My lawyer even suggested I contact her, but I don't know if that would help or make things worse. My wife is a narcissist who believes her own lies, but I still can't believe she's been texting him all day while I'm at work. I can't believe how she acts like she's being sneaky. The truth is, she's not fooling anyone. Instead of being with our kids, she spends half the day locked away, texting and calling her affair partner. And the audacity to claim that our children are her top priority? It's beyond comprehension. How could she throw away 23 years of marriage and 8 kids? I've stopped trying to make sense of it, it's just irrational. She's a narcissist. She admits that what she's doing is wrong, yet she continues. That's not just selfish, it's almost sociopathic. I asked her if she would forgive me if I'd done what she did, and she flat out said no. But here she is, still carrying on with the affair. The only thing she fears is me exposing the truth, and I'm not sure how long that fear will hold her back. My lawyer has advised against contacting the other guy's wife until we have legal protections in place, and I'm anxiously waiting for that. It's sickening to think how little respect she has for me and our children. The worst part is, my kids have no idea what's really going on. I want to protect them from the truth, but I can't. It's the hardest thing I've ever experienced. Therapy helps, but sometimes it only brings up more anger and frustration. A month after she asked for a divorce, she officially responded to the petition, stating she wanted to take the kids and move out of state to live near her affair partner, no less. But her lawyer and the mediator eventually made her realize she had no case for relocation, especially since the kids didn't want to leave. So, she changed her mind, saying she wanted to keep the house, claiming our neighborhood community would support her. When some neighbors gave her harsh feedback about what she'd done, she backed down. I have mixed feelings about keeping the house. A fresh start sounds appealing, but my older kids want me to stay in the home for their younger siblings. She hasn't spoken to me in over 3 months, even though we're still living under the same roof. So I have no idea what her plans are. My best case scenario? She leaves, moves in with her affair partner, and I get the kids for the school year. It would be hard to be away from them over the summer, but at least I wouldn't have to deal with her multiple times a week. I still can't believe I ever tried to fight for reconciliation. Back then, I had no idea how deep she was into this affair. Yesterday, she texted me, asking to talk. We haven't spoken in 3.5 months, so I thought it was about the kids, the house, or alimony. But she started the conversation with an apology. I was surprised, but I don't believe it. She followed it up with excuses, claiming the affair was an accident, but I wasn't buying it. I told her actions speak louder than words. She said she hoped we could start talking again, but I reminded her that everything we're going through, the affair, the divorce, the silence, was her choice. She conveniently forgot that she's the one who cheated. I pointed out that I still don't know if she's with her affair partner or not, and she tried to brush it off. But I told her it mattered to me. It was just a brief, 5-minute conversation, and it doesn't change anything. I can't help but wonder if reality is finally breaking through her delusion. As for the divorce, I've been dealing with it for about 8 months now. Her family knows about the divorce, but not about the affair. I'm sure she's painted me as the bad guy, but I can't control that. I've been trying to let go of that worry. A few months ago, I wrote a letter to my in-laws, expressing gratitude for their support and letting them know I was aware of the affair. I made it clear that I expected them to support their daughter, but they can contact me if they want. My lawyer advised against sending it, and for the past 8 months, I've followed that advice. But I'm starting to grow tired of letting her control my actions. I've been thinking about sending the letter anyway. My therapist doesn't see an issue with it, and friends and family are split on the decision. Lately, I've been talking to a school counselor about arranging therapy for our younger kids, ages 13, 11, and 7. Only the 13-year-old knows about the affair, and he found out from his older sister. I emailed her about the counselor, but she was upset that I didn't discuss it with her first. I told her I don't need her permission to explore options for our kids' well-being. I hope she prioritizes their mental health and that we can get the help they need to cope with all of this.